It's Mike O'Toole coming to you live from the Mohawk Honda Studios, and the camera's focused directly on me. Reason being is Nate is not here today, so I'm going to hit you with a little bit of an industry update. For those of you that work here, if you're watching, our staff is watching, you know that I like to provide as much info about the car business as I can. So today, I want to feed that directly to you. So apologies if you hear me run on a little bit, but there's definitely some interesting info in here. Some of this has to do with where the auto industry finished in 2025. Some has to do with where we're starting in 2026 and what we see going forward. So I figured I'd jump on anyway, even though Nate is not here, and just bring you some really important data, some information that might help you make a decision as to whether it's 2026 is the year to buy a car. Is it the one where you're just going to continue to maintain your current vehicle and use our services at Mohawk Auto Group? So we appreciate you tuning in, regardless of which social platform you're watching. If you're watching the live, feel free to put any comments or questions you have, and our producers that are sitting right over there will feed them to me the best they can, and I'll be happy to answer them if you have any questions. If you're watching the replay, we really appreciate it. Please subscribe, like the episode, pass it to anybody you think that might use some of this info, and we'd really appreciate it. Feel free to put your comments in. If you have any questions, even if you're watching the replay, put them in the comments, and we'll be happy to get back to you on whatever platform is easiest for you to get the answers. So now we are sitting here, it's Friday. As usual, we come to you live every week on Fridays at noontime, and we're just about on time. If this is your first time watching Mohawk Table Talk, I'll kind of give you the review of why we started this podcast. It's been a couple years now. We come to you every week from the Mohawk Auto Group. If you don't know where we are located, we're located in upstate New York. We're in the Albany, New York market, so right outside the capital. The Honda store, which is where we're coming to you from in our fancy state-of-the-art studio here, the Honda store is located just outside of Schenectady, which is just west of Albany. The Mohawk Chevrolet store is just north of Albany in Ballston Spa, right off Route 87. That anybody who's been to New York knows what that is. Goes all the way from Canada all the way down to New York City. So we are very easy to get to. We also have two other rooftops. We have a Mohawk Collision Center, state-of-the-art collision repair, certified in just about every manufacturer that is out there. So very, very impressive. If you need collision work, we can certainly help you. And lastly, we also represent Wrap Kings. Wrap as in wrap your vehicle. And if you've watched some of our prior episodes, we had Jordan and a few other folks on the podcast to tell you exactly how we can help, whether it's just to customize your own vehicle or if you have a small business or anything like that, anything to stand out in terms of making that extra impression. So that's what we're about. We come to you every week with some info. Today is certainly about some one-way info here because I don't have Nate to chat with, but normally we like to converse and clue you in on what's going on in the auto business, not just nationally, but also locally. We do have a few things that are going on locally. We were super proud to participate. Mohawk Auto Group gives thousands of dollars and thousands of hours of volunteer back into the community in where we, because we live here, we work here, we play here. I say it every week, so giving back to the community is super important. Just last weekend, we were lucky enough to be help volunteer at a Special Olympics event at their regional bowling event, their contest, which is really pretty neat. The athletes had a stupendous time. We saw some great bowling, and we're super proud to participate in that. Also, last week, well, rather this week, we had the Wing Madness, and that was a huge success. If you haven't checked out any of our posts, Mohawk Honda hosted a Wing Madness with some of the local restaurants, some of the local wing providers. We had a lot of people in the showroom. People really showed up, so we like doing that. It was definitely not a sales event. We're not most of the events that we participate in and that we provide are not sales related. We're not trying to sell you anything. We just want to be part of that community, and we have a great place to do that. So feel free to stop by anytime and chat with us. So knowing all of that, we appreciate you chiming in. Some folks out there I know watch the news religiously. The newspaper might be a thing of the past, but if you take your phone and scroll on what's going on in the economy, you'll probably already know some of these stats that I'll talk about really quickly. Where this idea came from about just giving you an industry update comes right from our company, where every month we make sure, myself included, that we let our staff know exactly what's going on in the car business and what's going on in the economy, so they have an idea of how that impacts our business and how that impacts all of our customers. Because we believe it's very important that we're in touch with exactly how customers feel when they come to the dealership, if they're having service or potentially considering a new vehicle purchase. So that's where this comes from. We review these statistics and some of this info with our team, and we now want to make sure that we bring that to our listening audience and watching audience also. This is all available. This is all public information that we have here. There certainly isn't anything that's a secret. And if you know anything about Mohawk Auto Group and specifically our podcast, we want to be as transparent as possible. Our goal with the podcast is to make you as informed a buyer as possible. So whether you're buying a car, buying service or parts or a collision, it's very important that we inform you as much as we can. So let me just give you some of the quick info here. I have this all queued up because we do this all the time. I'm the guy locally who loves to talk about the stats, because sometimes the feeling out there, and a lot of things are done on feeling in this business, especially if you're feeling like buying a car or you're feeling like not buying a car and saving some money, certainly get it. However, sometimes the statistics are kind of interesting to kind of couple with those feelings just to get an idea of what makes sense or what doesn't for your family. So real quick, just rewinding, we like to look back on the economy as a whole, the U.S. economy. Last month, the report of the current U.S.-wide unemployment rate, which is very important because without employment, certainly changes big ticket item purchases like vehicles and service and spending money. 4.3%, which is actually down, which is good, which is down from December, which was 4.4%. That's nationally. So that's a real positive thing. We have not seen any fluctuation in unemployment recently. And so that's a positive thing. However, one thing we have seen a big fluctuation in, and this has been since our last podcast, is the average fuel price. Now we're talking about regular 87 petrol has jumped way up. And most of you who have followed the news know there's certainly a reason for that. Currently, as of today, which is March 6th, 2026, the average fuel price across the country for 87 octane is $3.32. Now that's way up almost 15% from $2.98 that it was a week ago when we did this podcast. And there's certainly a good reason for that. If you've been following the news and the conflicts that are going on in the Middle East, gas prices are rising. Let's see, let me just read this here so I don't misquote. Most of the fluctuation is largely driven by escalating conflicts in the Middle East. Of course, we know that. They've pushed oil prices to the mid $70 per barrel range, which obviously and hindered shipping. Between those two things, you have decreased supply and increased demand. You're going to see those prices go up. So we're obviously not economists, and we don't know where that's going to go. But that is a big deal because it certainly costs money. Now, we're going to jump onto EV sales in a second because those won't be impacted in EV operation. Cost of operation will not be impacted by that, of course. However, also in the car business, what we do as a nation is we measure how many new cars are sold every year. And if you heard a prior podcast, that actually has an acronym that goes with it. It's called the SAAR, SAAR, which means seasonally adjusted annualized rate. So you've heard me mention that before, and that rate is a certain number of cars that are sold within an aggregate 12-month period of time. That's new cars. And it is an estimate because it's a forward-looking statistic, not a rearward-looking statistic. And we measure that on how the economy is buying cars, how people are buying cars. Are there a lot of cars being sold out there in the new car market? And right now, after February, the amazing thing is there actually is an increase in that SAAR, which is the estimate on how many cars will be sold in the next 12 months, to 15.8 million cars in this next 12-month period. So that's kind of interesting. So actually, we've been talking about affordability for the last 66 days at this point. The first 2 months plus 6 days, we've been talking about affordability as the number one terminology for 2026 and where everybody's heads are at in terms of what's important to them when they're deciding on how to spend their money this year. So affordability is important, yet we saw an increase in new car sales, or at least the projected new car sales for the year. So that's kind of interesting. So take that for what it is. Now, I just mentioned EVs. We're talking about the current conflict, whether it's a short-term conflict or it's going to be long-term, we don't know, obviously, in the Middle East, which certainly is affecting the cost of petrol, and you'll see those gas prices at your local gas pump probably increase past the $3.32. That's the national average right now. However, EV sales, this certainly could bring some additional attention onto battery electric vehicles that have no gas at all, right? Or possibly hybrid vehicles where you have a traditional hybrid with both gas and battery powered vehicles, and obviously the between the tank capacity and just the overall need to fuel up is less. So keep an eye out for that. If you were waiting for that time to have something that sparked your interest in a hybrid or a battery electric vehicle, or BEV, we call it, this might be the time. However, last year, just to kind of recap where we were last year, 2025, when we started, and we've talked about this a couple times, this time last year, 2025 looked like it was going to be a crazy good year for electric vehicle sales. We're talking about new EV sales. And that was actually the trend. In fact, they were outpacing the estimates all the way until September. And then we all know that in the end of September, that federal income tax credit was removed from new vehicle purchases up to $7,500. That was a thing up till September 30th. After September 30th, it was no longer a thing. And of course, what we saw the market follow that trend where there were a lot of EV sales all the way through September, and then they just fell off. So we're trending toward about 12% market share for EVs last year and ended up at 8%. So for the year in 2025, 8% of the new vehicles sold were EVs. So that was just about where we ended 2024. So there really wasn't too much of a change there. Kind of interesting. Depending on what happens here with the current conflicts and how long that goes and what the impact is through the supply chain for that petrol, we actually may see some EV sales impacted long term. So definitely important. The availability of EVs is there. And one of the things that we measure to determine whether that's the case is we look at market days supply, which means how many vehicles are in the market available for sale compared to how many are being purchased. And there's about double the amount of EVs available compared to what the demand is right now. However, when we update you next week and in future episodes, we expect to see that change a little bit, especially considering when we see those regular fuel prices increase. If you're like me, I want to make sure that I'm saving the best I can. And if there was just that one thing that I needed to make the decision to trade my gas car for an electric car, this certainly could be it. So that's super interesting and very important. On an affordability note, just to kind of finish some of my stats here that I have on the market, we actually see some real positive things here for dealers, for customers, anybody who's considering purchasing a vehicle. The average price here, let me just flip my screen here real quick. The average used vehicle price, not EVs, just all used vehicles altogether, was decreased. In fact, it decreased about 3% over the prior period that they measured that. So under $25,500 for the average used vehicle price. And that's all encompassing. That's not just Honda, it's not just Chevrolet, it's everything that includes EVs and regular gas vehicles. We also saw a decrease in new vehicle pricing, new vehicle listing price, which may be after incentives are considered and so forth. So you see, we saw that decrease also. So those are two positive things. There has been a little bit of a stagnation in the auto loan rate amounts that people are paying, and there hasn't really been a change. It stayed relatively flat, meaning there's no change. We're not sure if the next Federal Reserve meeting with a chair-elect is going to impact that, or the one coming up here in the next in second quarter. So we'll certainly see that. We like to report that back to you all the time because that's something that's important to folks, even if it's not specific to your vehicle purchase. Anytime the economy is going through any flux, a lot of people, which I understand, kind of hold tight, right? Like, geez, let me just see what's going on here before I make any decisions. So we certainly respect that, and we want to feed back as much information as we can. So thanks for listening. That's a whole bunch of information about the market. I also want to hit you with a few things that are going on as related to the Mohawk Auto Group. As you know, I mentioned we have two rooftops. You know, we have Mohawk Honda, where I'm sitting. We also have Mohawk Chevrolet in Ballston Spa. So I'll hit you with some pretty cool things that are happening here in Chevy's world. So Chevy has some really cool stuff coming up, and believe it or not, I know you can't see the camera isn't facing the exterior of the building. However, believe it or not, the snow is melting out there. We're looking forward to a 60, almost 70 degrees next week. So we anticipate there's going to be a lot of melting. One thing that brings out are people looking to just finally get out of those winter blues, get outside, thinking about that sports car, that fun car. This might be the time to do that. So newsroom from Chevrolet right online. You can check it out yourself. I wanted to check this out so I could give you a quick update all over Chevy's website, America's quickest production car. The Corvette ZR1X does 8.675 second, that 8.675 seconds quarter mile. That's crazy. There's some crazy fast cars out there. And you may not be that person who wants to run their car in a quarter mile, but there's a lot of attention on the Corvette. There's a lot of attention on that Chevy brand. Those muscle cars are not gone. Make sure you check those out. Check out the Mohawk Chevrolet website, see what inventory we have. Like Nate mentioned last week, we have over a dozen Corvettes available, ready. We kept them, we held them for the wintertime so that you could have some selection in the springtime. Now, changing gears a little bit, we were talking about Chevy's horsepower. We're talking about their pretty cool muscle car type sports cars. We'll switch over to Honda. Honda had some really cool announcement. In fact, this was made just about a week ago on February 26th. You check out Honda and Acura's webpage for their news, for their news postings. Honda is rated as the #1 full-line automaker in fuel efficiency. So that kind of goes with some of those news updates that I mentioned, right? The latest U.S. EPA trends report indicated that Honda as a whole, when you combine the EPA ratings of all of their vehicles, was ended up as #1 in terms of the major manufacturers that are available to U.S. buyers. So chances are you only have one car, maybe two in the household, and what vehicle you have is specific to your lifestyle. But if you're considering, geez, I want to make sure I'm fuel efficient, yet I want to get a new car that's reliable, Honda could certainly be yours. And check out the show notes. We'll make sure we put this link in the show notes because it's really pretty neat. You'll see a list of the manufacturers. There are a lot of manufacturers out there that have some great fuel economy ratings. The technology that we have in a lot of these cars is really second to none. That technology helps you drive more efficiently, and it actually reduces the cost to drive your car every day, every week. So fuel is certainly a big deal. And if you're going to check out a car in these times when we're talking about increased fuel prices, might as well check out Honda because certainly rated as the #1 manufacturer for fuel efficiency. Really, really pretty neat. On that note, Mohawk Honda, we've just been allocated a couple additional Honda Prelude models. If you're not familiar, the Prelude is all new, redesigned, EV-centric, really a really pretty cool vehicle. And those aren't going to be probably sitting on the showroom floor available for sale, but they are available as on an incoming basis. So if you have any questions, we encourage you to visit our website, click the chat button, and get some info from one of our product specialists about what's going on with that, which is pretty neat. So let me give you a couple others here. I appreciate everybody listening. Hopefully it's not too much of a run-on, but I want to pack a lot of info into just a short period of time there. And let's see. Oh, one last update. Big coincidence here. As we're talking about some of the manufacturers out there, fuel efficiency, just kind of tech forward, that type of thing. It's 2026, right? We're all we talk about is the advancements in technology. And in fact, on some of the prior episodes last year, Nate and I were chatting about some of the autonomous vehicles, right? When we think about tech forward, we usually think about EVs. Companies, first companies in the water there, like Tesla and so forth. And if you haven't heard, there's a big company that's worldwide, other than in the U.S., called BYD, that lead volume in terms of EV sales. A lot of these companies have a lot of stake in the game to make autonomous vehicles also. Obviously, autonomy in terms of driving, something always, topic of discussion. You can sit around the dinner table, or you can sit with your buddies and watch a game, and just you see a commercial come on, and I've heard it both ways. Geez, that autonomous vehicle would be really cool. Autonomous meaning it drives itself, right? No human interaction. And other folks say, oh, I would never do that. I don't want a vehicle to be in charge of mine or my family's safety, and I'm just kind of along for the ride. That kind of seems a little weird, and it definitely does, but they are coming. I was just checking the local newswire here, and what we see, we're in upstate New York. We don't have any autonomous vehicle contracts here with any of the manufacturers anywhere in our state. However, there certainly have been some testing grounds for taxis, right? Call them robo-taxis. I've heard that term before. Robo-taxis are autonomous vehicles that drive around in a test mode or in a beta type mode, where the vehicle is already produced. It's being tested for network reliability and things like that, safety, of course. One of those cities that the new Tesla robo-taxi is being being tested is Austin, Texas. Kind of cool. And I didn't tell anybody here that's listening in our room here, but I'm actually headed to Austin in a couple weeks myself, and I look forward to seeing if I can get in one of these robo-taxis, and I'll make sure I document it and bring it back to the podcast. It's going to be pretty neat. There are also Waymo, and there are a couple others that are being tested in Austin as well as Las Vegas, and also one of the California cities. So that's going to be pretty neat. And of course, as it relates to fuel, no fuel. These autonomous robo-taxis are completely self-sufficient. In fact, there's not, most of them, a lot of them, there isn't even a driver cockpit where a human being could sit. A lot of them are just kind of moving on their own. They're really, really pretty neat. And so there's an infinite amount of information out there, both accurate and inaccurate online, of course. But I encourage you to visit any of the auto reporting websites online. And so we'll be sure to hitch our wagon to that as soon as we know anything coming up. Because what's better than not having to worry about driving to work every day? I know, even though my commute's not that long, a lot of folks have a long commute, and that certainly could help with that and make it easier for you. Let alone don't have to spend any money on fuel. So that's a whole bunch of information. I really appreciate you listening. Apologies for rambling on. I promise Nate will be back on the next episode next week, and we'll be able to have some banter and get more than just a one-sided view on this. But I wanted to be very factual with some information about the market. I'll just give you a real quick recap here, and then we'll talk about seeing you next week. A lot of positive things in the economy, and as it relates to the auto business, unemployment rate has not changed. In fact, it's decreased a little bit. The current SAR, or how many cars are going to be sold in the next 12 months, actually increased. So that shows increased attention to that. EV sales have been a bit flat year over year. However, we see with the current conflict in the Middle East that this certainly, the EV sales might be get a little push there from the higher fuel prices which are going on now. Also, Chevy has some cool stuff going on with their vehicles, including Corvette and so forth, just kind of getting that spring mood. Honda has a really cool award that was just received or bestowed on them as the #1 fuel-efficient OEM in the country, which is we're super proud of. So, saving money on fuel, there's two ways to do that. You could go EV, you could go hybrid, or you could go Honda. Those certainly help. So appreciate you tuning in. If you have any questions or any comments about anything that we were chatting about here, feel free to put them in the comments, and we'll be happy to respond to you individually. We can also address anything we have next week, so we really appreciate it. Regardless of which platform you're on, feel free to subscribe. Feel free to pass this episode if it's just somebody that likes all that info, likes that